Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined in the studio today by Casey Keller. We'll start with the big news coming out of Spain. Carlo Ancelotti has put pen to paper on a new contract at Real Madrid, which seals see him there until 2026. Why is this a big deal? Because we all assumed he'd be going to Brazil at the end of the season. Front page of AS says Brazil can wait. This is a big surprise to wake up to this morning as we welcome in Frank Leboeuf. But first, heartbroken at Christmas as well. Gustavo Hoffmann is with us. Ancelotti will not be your man, Gustavo. How angry are the Brazilians?
Hello there, everybody. Well, Brazil now is in a very hard situation because everybody was expecting that Carlo Ancelotti would be the Brazilian manager from 2024 on, at least to the World Cup. And now Brazil doesn't have a head coach, doesn't have a president at CBF, the Brazilian Football Confederation. And I'm sure that this point that Brazil is now living a huge mess administration, it was a decisive point for Carlo Ancelotti because, yes, CBF and Carlo Ancelotti were talking. The Brazilian Federation had some approval from Ancelotti that he could be the head coach, but after the Brazilian president of CBF was sacked by a court earlier this month, I think that everybody was very clear for Carlo Ancelotti that he should remain as Real Madrid head coach. He has a great extension, 2 more seasons. He's living a dream here in Madrid. He's having a brilliant season ahead of Real Madrid. It's the best beginning of season for Real Madrid with Carlo Ancelotti ever. So I think that was an easy decision for Carlo Ancelotti. And now Brazil will have to look for a manager because the president, who's now active president, is an interim president, Perdiz. And also the Brazilian head coach now is also interim, Fernando Diniz. So we really don't know what's going to be of the Brazilian national team next year.
What a life it is to be Carlo Ancelotti as Julien Laurent joins us. Talk about holding the perfect hand, Jules. You can do what you like. You've got Brazil flirting with you. You've got Real Madrid as well. How much has he used that to his advantage, signing this new contract from Real Madrid? What do we understand? What did maybe he insist would happen?
I really don't think Carlo used that in any ways. I think he was very clear from the beginning that he could discuss with the Brazilian Federation, that I think he was really interested into the job, but that he still had a year left on his contract at Real Madrid. And I think he was always very open and transparent with Brazil by saying, listen, if Real Madrid want to keep me and I feel like staying a little bit longer, then I could also stay longer. That's why we said with Gus, we had him on the show with Gab, it was never a good idea anywhere from the Brazilian Federation to be so obsessed with Carlo, because there was a point where it was Carlo or no one, really. They were so convinced he was going to join. And it's just, this is not how you deal with such a big team as well. Maybe if it was a smaller country, okay, you could, I guess, try to get Carlo. But you can't let Chichi go like this, and then after that, just hope for Carlo Ancelotti to at some point say, yes, you're not really sure, you don't really plan for anything else, you don't have a plan B, like Gus just said. Fernando Diniz is not really a plan B, he's a head coach in another club. So it was always going to be a bad idea for them. And for Carlo, it was always going to go where he felt the best, really. And right now, it's pretty clear that staying at Real Madrid is the best option for him.
So, Gustavo, what are they going to do? Who are they going to get?
The problem now is Brazilian Football Federation doesn't have a president. The president active now is an interim president because Edinaldo Rodrigues, who was the guy who was talking to Carlo Ancelotti, as I told you, was sacked by a court. So now Brazil will probably, we are not sure about it, but will probably have new elections for CBF this January. After that, after the CBF decides who's going to be the president, this new president will have to decide who's going to be the new head coach. So now, we're almost in 2024, we really don't know what's going to be of the Brazilian national team next year.
Obviously, if Ancelotti took over, Gus, it would be a case of him being the first non-Brazilian to be in charge of the international side. Is that still a possibility? Could we still see a foreigner come in?
Yes, for sure, for sure. Well, as I told you, we don't have any signs of what is going to happen, but we have the feeling of the fans, for example. And one of the names that the fans in Brazil most like is José Mourinho. He's a name for the Brazilian fans. Brazilian fans really enjoy the idea of having José Mourinho. This is not a possibility that CBF is thinking right now. I'm just saying that the fans in Brazil would like to have José Mourinho. Another possibility, one foreign coach who's working in Brazil, Abel Ferreira, another Portuguese coach for Palmeiras, the coach who has won the most title, more titles than any other in the Brazilian football over the last year. So Abel Ferreira is another possibility. And of course that Fernando Diniz can leave Fluminense and be the main football head coach of Brazil.
What a soap opera Mourinho would be, Jules, eh?
That would be incredible. I mean, I sign everywhere he wants. I can fly him over there if he wants to. This would be amazing. And obviously, we know that right now Mourinho is out of contract in June, and it doesn't really look like Roma are ready to offer him a new deal. They haven't even discussed it. He, I think, would like to stay. But if Roma said, listen, we don't want you anymore, and we want to go a different direction, then he will be on the market. And surely, I mean, again, if you look at it, who would not want to be the Brazil coach? For Carlo, it's different because there was Real Madrid there. He's there. Like Gus said, it's the best ever season under him. So far, there's Jude Bellingham. There's all those new players, young players coming through. There's probably Kylian Mbappe in the summer as well. So it makes a lot of sense. But apart from Carlo, who else who is free or has a job not as big as Brazil, and there's not that many, would not be interested? So for me, Jose Mourinho, of course, would be interested, especially if Roma don't extend his deal, which is the most likely as we're talking right now. But there'll be others. And I think the Portuguese coach who've had a big impact in the Brazilian league, of course, people like Jorge Jesus, Abel Ferreira, we just mentioned, I think also because of the language, could make a lot of sense if you're the Brazilian interim president of the federation.
Meanwhile, for Carlo Ancelotti, will he get a nice new centre-back as a signing-on bonus, Jules? What are his options?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. And again, in the discussions to renew his contract, to extend his contract, he made it clear that at least in January he needs, it's not just that he wants to, he needs a centre-back. And I'm sure he watched the show when Stevie mentioned Thiago Silva. I'm not sure if Thiago Silva really right now, unfortunately for Stevie, is at the top of the list. But certainly from Rafael Varane to Rafa Marin to Ignacio, there's a few options there, I think, for Real Madrid to be able to go and satisfy what Carlo wants.
How difficult is it, Frank, for any of these players, certainly when you take a look at the younger ones in particular, to be parachuted into a Real Madrid side where expectations are so high?
It is hard, and it's why for me there is only one solution: taking somebody who already knows the house. And Rafael is the real man. I mean, it should be the right man. Well, the only problem is the amount of injuries he's going through, and he's been through, it's gone through, and that could be the main problem. But otherwise,
and he plays for Manchester United. That's also a problem, Frank, isn't it? He's at another club.
Yeah,
he's not just wandering the streets.
Well, he doesn't really play. I mean, he's been on the bench sometimes. You know, Ten Hag showed to the world that he preferred Maguire to Rafael Varane. So there is maybe a time for Rafael Varane to say to Ten Hag what he thinks, and if there is another possibility for him to express and enjoy the end of his career and go back to where he was one of the stars and where he won all his silverware, it's a good opportunity, and he knows the house. Everybody should be happy if he doesn't get any injury. But yeah, I only see one guy, Thiago Silva. I'm sorry, you can have some problems very soon, and the other players are too young and too inexperienced to go for that, and also because it's not gonna last long. It has to be somebody who's ready to help as an interim as well, and after leave his place to the players who used to play and just came back from injury.
Has Varane got any legs? Has this story got any legs, Jules?
Yeah, I think, listen, he knows the place so well, obviously. He left because he just wanted a new adventure in his career, something different for him and his family. And I don't think he could have anticipated what happened for him at Manchester United and how bad everything has been, really. But Real Madrid feels very much like home, like Lens, where he started in France is a little bit, but Real Madrid is even more like home for him. So he could do a really good job for 6 months. There's no doubt. I think he can stay 6 months without any injuries. I think the way that Real Madrid are playing, and I think we mentioned it the other day when we also mentioned Thiago Silva, I think if you have Rudiger next to Varane, Rudiger can do a lot of the running and Rafa can do a lot of the anticipation, the reading of the game, the positioning right, and the Rudiger-Varane partnership can actually work really well too. So for me, I agree with Frank, he makes a lot of sense. But however, we go back to that discussion, do you go for someone like him that won't cost you much in terms of a fee for the transfer, for example, but you're going to get 6 months out and then this is it? Or do you plan a little bit more for the future and you go for someone younger with all the kind of negative or the risk that has with it, and you spend a bit more money on someone like Ignacio, for example, who is a wonderful prospect at Sporting, might not just be ready yet, but will be, and he's already a really good defender.
What would you do, Case, if you're in charge of Real Madrid?
Well, I think if you could get a loan deal for Varane, you got to do that instantly, because then you have. I read some things where they were talking about trying to structure it very similar to what they did with Kepa.
Yep.
To get him in on that short term to cover, and then see if it makes sense to go full time, or in the summer say, you know what, we got some guys coming back from injury. Let's go spend some money on somebody long term. But right now they need somebody in, and I think he makes the most sense being there for as long as he was.